morning. Welcome to Pot Up with Matthews in the Morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. It's a Wednesday edition, and we have a Georgia Bulldog flavor today. We got our man Mark Schlabach from ESPN.com, and then former Georgia kicker and my old teammate with the Bears, Kevin Butler. We're going to kick the program off, and we're going to go to the Titan Tomorrow hotline, and we're joined by, as I mentioned, Mark Schlabach from ESPN.com. Good morning, Mark. How are you?
Shane, doing well. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Before we start talking about what's going on with college football and the SEC, I want people to, because we got a lot of Gator listeners here, but, you wrote a book for Bobby Bowden. Mm-hmm. Talk a little bit about that. And then also you wrote a bunch of books for the old Duck Dynasty folks. How'd you get involved with those guys?
As soon as Coach Bowden retired, his PR publicist at the time, Kim Schiff, reached out to me and said he was doing a bunch of speaking tours, speaking engagements for large corporations, and they were interested in doing a book. And I found a publisher, and we did the book, and it really was one of the most enjoyable things I've done in my career because it was so great to spend time with him. And when the book came out and we did some book signings together, I was able to spend time with him in the car going from town to town, which was really neat. And, we'd hit the highway and he'd say, "No offense, but I'm going to be out in about 10 minutes." And we'd fall asleep and wake up. We got somewhere a couple hours later. But then the woman who was the editor on Coach Bowden's book, as soon as that book was done, she called me and said, "Have you ever duck hunted? I got a family down in Louisiana that are big duck hunters we're interested in doing a book with." And I didn't think much of it at the time. And that very night, it was the night before Duck Dynasty aired for the first time. They were on 2020. And I called Phyllis, the editor, back the next morning. I said, "I want that book." And one book ended up being 7 books. I think we did 7 total.
Wow.
And I'll never have another franchise like that does that well. I mean, it was incredibly successful, and just the entire phenomenon.
That's good stuff. Well, with this pandemic going on, obviously, the big story is, are we going to play football? What are your sources telling you about college football?
I think a lot of people are hopeful, but I think as of this point, it's hope more than anything. I've actually got a piece running today and tomorrow addressing a lot of this. I think a lot of it, Shane, depends on where you're located. Mm-hmm. I think in the South, there seems to be a lot more confidence that football is going to be played. I think as we've seen states like Georgia and Alabama and Florida open up, it's becoming more likely. I know the SEC presidents are meeting virtually on Friday to vote whether or not to bring student athletes back to campus sometime in June, whether it's June 1st or June 15th. I think there's not a consensus on what that date is at this point. And I think the big thing for the SEC right now is they want to make sure it's as competitively balanced as possible. But, some states might not be willing to do it while others are, and you just got to address that. But the measures they're going to have to take just to get kids back into the weight room is pretty incredible. And to go from that to actually getting into huddles and getting into film room. I know Brian Hainline, the NCAA's medical director, said Friday night, the first 4 weeks, you can't even use a football. You can't share a football. So, you can't even play catch. So I think you still got a long way to go before they're going to allow kids to actually play and tackle.
Well, I think we're all keeping our fingers crossed that we play football. The schools have got to play football at some point during this calendar year, or a lot of programs won't make it. I've had different guests on, and, a lot of people don't like the cupcake games that the SEC teams play, but my thoughts are, first of all, the kids that go to the Troys, the South Alabamas, the FAUs of the world, they need to play that game against the big boys for their programs to survive. But it's also an opportunity for those kids who didn't get the opportunity to play Division I big boy football in the SEC, what they dreamed about their whole life. They get to go play in the Swamp, Tiger Stadium, different stadiums. It's a great experience for them. Do you see that possibly those games going away this year?
I think if the season is delayed, if it's delayed to start in October, I could see some conferences going conference only. I think if we get to a point in August or September where the SEC and the Big Ten and the Big 12 are back, but maybe the Pac 12's not, I think you could see those conferences that are playing go to conference games only. Um, I don't think this is going to be a normal season. I don't think it's going to be a cookie cutter season where everything's the same across the country. Um, I agree with you that football has to be played for most of these athletic departments to survive. I think schools like Georgia and Florida and Ohio State and Texas will probably be fine for a while because they have reserves in place and will be able to keep some of the donations. I think a lot of programs, including some in the Power Five, if football's not played, I don't know that they can keep their doors open. I've got a big package running today on the finances of it all, and it is amazing how few of these schools actually have reserves in place to cover crisis like this. And for a program like UCF, if students aren't back on campus and they're not collecting student fees, which finances most of its athletic operation, I don't see how they can survive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a shame because I saw where Furman shut down their baseball program the other day. Florida Tech here in the state of Florida shut down its Division II football. But it's a shame. Let's move to the SEC. Let's start in the West. LSU lost a ton of talent off that team. How do you think LSU is going to look? I guess Miles Brennan's going to be their quarterback this year. What do you think about the Tigers?
I think schematically they're going to look a lot like they did a year ago. Whether or not they're going to be as successful, I have a hard time believing you lose Joe Burrow and those receivers and Clyde Edwards-Helaire and not miss a beat. And then Joe Brady leaves for the Carolina Panthers. But, they've got Insminger there. He knows the system. I've never seen a guy make that sort of a transformation in terms of his philosophy that late in his career. I mean, he was at Georgia when I was in school 25 years ago, coaching Eric Sire. And for him to be able to step back and let Joe Brady do his thing, I think says a lot about him. But, they still got Jamar Chase. They've still got Terrace Marshall Jr. They've still got weapons on the perimeter. We'll see if John Emery or Chris Curry can step up to replace Clyde Edwards-Helaire's production in the backfield. But as good as Burrow was last year, and I think he might have had arguably the greatest individual performance ever in a single season, those receivers made him pretty damn good too.
Yeah.
They're going to miss those guys. Those receivers, it was like some of the guys you had. They went up and made plays and fought for the ball and made some tremendous catches. But, I'm not taking anything away from him. But, they're going to miss those guys on the outside.
No doubt. When Jimbo Fisher at Texas A&M, I think this is year 3. They're paying him a ton of money. And basically, he's having the same record as Kevin Sumlin. Do you think there's a lot of pressure on him to win this year with Kellen Mond coming back at quarterback?
Yeah. $7.5 million a year, $75 million guaranteed. If they were to fire him tomorrow, they'd owe him all of it, which is incredible, especially when you look at the price of a barrel of oil right now. They probably can't feel real confident about it. But Mond has got to step up, play better on the road, take better care of the ball. They got to get better on the offensive line. I think they're bringing back 4 juniors up front, so they'll have a chance to be better there. Defensively, I think they should be pretty good on the defensive line. It's right now, I think it's just such an uphill climb when you've got Alabama up top every year and then LSU and Auburn right behind them. There's just not a lot of opportunities there for upward mobility, and they've beaten the Mississippi schools and they've beaten Arkansas, but really haven't beaten anybody outside of that. Haven't beaten the teams that are toss-up games or teams that they're not supposed to beat.
What are your thoughts? Speaking of Auburn, Bo Nix, obviously his dad was a quarterback at Auburn, and I had trained Joey Gatewood when he was a little bit younger, but he just seemed to me that he fit what Gus Malzahn wanted to do, especially when you go back to what Cam Newton did under Gus. Were you surprised that Joey Gatewood never really got an opportunity?
A little bit, but I knew they really liked Nix coming out of high school, and obviously he's a coach's son, very familiar with the program. I thought last year that if they just left him alone and didn't yank him in and out of games or rotate guys and Gus didn't try to get cute, that Nix could do a quality job for him. And, by his junior, senior year, he's going to be one of the better quarterbacks in the SEC. I like the addition of Chad Morris as offensive coordinator. He did a good job with the quarterbacks at Clemson. I think, if Gus is truly going to step away and let Chad do his thing and run the offense, or is Gus still going to have his fingers in it is the big question to me.
So in Tuscaloosa, Tua's little brother transfers. Was that a surprise to you? And I assume Mac Jones is their guy.
Yeah, I think Saban will go with the more experienced guy. A little bit of surprise, but I know Tua's little brother is very familiar with Mike Loxley, who was at Alabama and was the offensive coordinator there. Bama's going to be good. Going to be one of the top 3 teams in the country again. I thought Mac Jones played really well at the end of last year. They lose a couple of key guys on the outside, but they still bring back Jalen Waddle and Devonta Smith and Najee Harris in the backfield. So offensively, I don't think they're going to be much worse than they were a year ago.
Well, the 2 Mississippi schools, I mean, this was the year to go to SEC Media Days with Leach and Lane Kiffin. Growing up in the state of Mississippi, I don't think they could have hired 2 better guys for those programs, for the excitement in the state. Give me your thoughts on that. Obviously, it's going to be tough for both of them to compete at a high level over there in the West, but it wouldn't surprise me if Mississippi State or Ole Miss upset one of the big boys here and there. Your thoughts on Kiffin and Leach in Mississippi?
Yeah, that was actually one of the last places I got to go before the lockdown, and we spent some time. Chris Lowe and I went over and spent some time with Lane, and then we're going to Starkville and to see Leach, and ended up talking to him on the phone. But I think it's 2 big personalities that are going to do a lot to bring football, to make football in that state relevant again. I can remember when they were both ranked in the top 3 when Mullen was there, and Hugh Freeze had it going in Oxford. But it kind of fell off the last couple of years, and Lane's likes his quarterback. The big question to me is with Leach. He's kind of always done it his way, and the thing people tell me about him more than anything is he doesn't really change that much, and he doesn't change his offensive system, and everything stays the same. But he's got to play defense in the SEC, and he's never really had a really strong defense. And I just think to compete in this league, and particularly on that side of the league, you got to play defense, and we'll see if we can do it.
No doubt. Well, let's move over to the SEC East. What in the world is going on up in Knoxville with their recruiting class? Are you surprised at what's going on up there?
Jeremy's always been a good recruiter. I mean, he's aggressive. He gets after it. And, I was up there for the Georgia game last year, and I know a couple of guys on that staff. And this was back when there was really a ton of pressure on Jeremy. I mean, they were talking about firing Jeremy and letting Fulmer take the thing over. And all of a sudden they turn it around, and, they've got a lot of momentum coming off the end of last season. I don't know how much of it's realistic, because if you look at who they beat at the end of last year, it's Kentucky, Vanderbilt, UAB, and some other schools they're supposed to beat. But they got to get better on both lines of scrimmage. That was really their downfall the last couple of years. He's got to figure out if Jared Garantano is going to be his guy, or if Brian Maurer or the freshman out of Atlanta can overtake it. But they've got to get more consistent play at the quarterback position, no question.
Yeah. So Georgia, obviously, since Kirby's taken over, he's done a tremendous job. He's a great recruiter. They have a ton of 5 stars. Say what you want to say. Jake Fromm, was a very good college quarterback. But now they got all this hype with Jamie Newman coming from Wake Forest. Now he's coming in with a new offensive coordinator, a new system that he's not familiar with, new players that he's not familiar with. It's obviously going to hurt him not having spring ball. But are you buying the hype of Jamie Newman at Georgia?
The pro guys really like him. The PFF guys, Collinsworth, Steele, Pro Football Focus, those guys really like him. He's a lot different than Jake Fromm. He's bigger. He's got a stronger arm. Thought he's a little loose with the football at Wake Forest at times. I agree with you. I think the fact that Georgia has a new quarterback, has a new offensive coordinator and a new system, and they were going to open things up. I think not having spring ball and not being able to have voluntary passing drills during the summer is really, an obstacle for them, and they're going to have to make up a lot of ground really fast. But Georgia's still going to be good up front, even after losing the 2 tackles. Pickens is the real deal, but they've got to have other guys step up at receiver because that was a huge deficiency for them last year. We know they're going to be good on defense. We know they're going to be able to run the ball, but they've got to get Pickens some help on the perimeter.
So here in Gainesville, what Dan Mullen's done in his 2 years, obviously for him to get over the hump is very similar to what Coach Spurrier focused on when he took the job. Was for us to win championships, we got to beat Georgia. Now Dan's 0-2 against them, but have you seen Dan and his staff and this Florida football team narrow the gap with the talent that Georgia has?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they've recruited as strong as Kirby and his staff have, but I think with the mass exodus of juniors this past year in Athens, I think the gap has narrowed. I think the biggest thing, and you would know it better than me, but they found a consistent quarterback, guy who's going to take care of the football and can make some plays with the arm and his legs. They lost some key guys outside as well, but still bring back Grimes and Kyle Pitts, the tight end, and I think they're getting better on offense. And Grantham's going to have a pretty good unit as well. So I think I think they'll have some say in who wins the SEC East this year. I think the winner of the game in Jacksonville is probably the team that wins the division.
Yeah, I agree. In Columbia, South Carolina, I saw where a lot of the head coaches there in their athletic department took a 10% pay cut. Do you see that happening across the country here coming soon?
I think there are already about 25 FBS programs that have done it. Oregon, Washington State, Arizona. Some have been 10%, some have been 20%. I think when you look at these university systems that have already lost $200-300 million because of tuition refunds and the money they're losing in their hospitals, I think there are going to be financial cuts across the board. I think a lot of these athletic departments that have been propped up by institutional support, I think that money's going to go away, and they're going to have to figure out a way to make up for it.
We're speaking with Mark Schlabach from ESPN.com. Last couple of things for you, Mark. Here on, I think it's May 20th. Who are you picking if we play football, your 14 playoff? Who you got in it?
We're assuming every conference plays.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go Ohio State, Clemson, Alabama. Oh, who would my fourth one be? The fourth one's a toughie. Or I guess Oklahoma. I actually got to play golf with Shane Beamer a couple weeks ago. They really like Spencer Rattler.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they didn't go out and get another one-year quarterback transfer. But they like Rattler a lot. I think as long as Lincoln's there calling plays, they're going to score a bunch of points, and nobody in that league plays much defense, so I think they'll be fine.
Right. And then obviously you got Alabama playing who in Atlanta?
I'll go Alabama, Georgia again.
Alabama, Georgia. Well,
I like defense.
Yeah, well, we shall see. But Mark, hey man, I appreciate you taking the time to join the program. Hope you and your family are safe, and we'll talk to you soon, bud.
Great. Thanks, Shane. Thanks for having me.
All right, that's Mark Schlabach from ESPN.com. You can follow him on Twitter at Mark_Schlabach. We're going to take our first time out of the program. We come back and we joined by former Gator, Georgia Bulldog. He wishes he was a Gator, Kevin Butler.
Timeout! Timeout! Hey! Timeout! 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 There we go. Good.
We want to take this moment to thank all our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills.
Let's give them something to cheer for now.
Our Gridiron sponsors are Crime Prevention Security, small enough to serve you, large enough to care. Titan MRI, Gainesville's only locally owned and operated MRI facility. Peachland Dentistry, Gator Nation's #1 choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte and surrounding areas. Area Rug Masters, your #1 choice for rug cleaning, and Pound Hurt, preferred personal injury attorneys.
Our touchdown sponsors are Campus USA Credit Union, Celebration Point Town Center, Tropical Smoothie Cafe, The Keys Grill and Piano Bar, The Digital Mortgage Guy, Adams Ribs, Cloud9 Spa, Gator Dominoes, Celebrate Primary Care, Center State Bank, Gator Bait Media, and Davis Chevrolet.
If you are interested in promoting your business on the show, you can visit our website, potupwithshane.com, and click on the advertise button or call Freddie Wiebe at 352-284-3733.
Again, thank you for all the great businesses that support the show. Please remember, if you like what we are doing here, thank our sponsors and support the businesses that support us.
He's looking, still looking. He's going for the end zone. He's got a touchdown.
Welcome back to Pot Up with Matthews in the Morning from the Crime Prevention Security Systems Studios. Large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Celebration points where the Gators come to celebrate with premium brands like Bass Pro Shop, Tommy Hilfiger, Hotel Indigo, Nike Medici's, Regal Cinemas, and coming soon, the HBC's new restaurant, Spurrier's Gridiron Grill and Visors Rooftop Bar. We will see you at Celebration Point where the Gators come to celebrate. Our next guest, Georgia Bulldogs, Chicago Bears Super Bowl champ, my good buddy and former teammate, Kevin Butler. How you doing, Butthead? Good morning.
I'm doing great, Shane. Good to see you, buddy.
You going to come down to Coach Spurrier's Gridiron Grill and Visors Rooftop Bar?
Well, of course I will. You know I'll be there. It's a pretty challenging time to pop open a restaurant, but if anybody can do it down there, I'm sure Spurrier can pull it off.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Well, Butthead, let's go back to your high school days, long time ago. I was reading you. I want to say you kicked a long field goal. Your team won the state championship. But then Vince Dooley had a little conversation with you after the game. Tell us how that went.
Well, you know what? It was my junior year. We had made it to the state championship, and I think we had 14 guys in 1979, 14 guys that signed D1 scholarships off of that team. So I was kind of the player that was left behind, one of the junior starters. We had about 3 of them. So, you know, after that game, Coach Dooley let me know I was on the map, and that gave me a lot of ability, you know, to work a little harder going into my senior year. What really happened my senior year, my first game, I was a quarterback, defensive back. I never came off the field. Kicking was always a second and third position. But the last play of the game, scrambling around, and a big defensive lineman named Harris Barton, who played quite a long time in the NFL, just landed on my leg, hyperextended my knee, and I was done. I was done for my senior year after the first game, and I'd kicked a 52-yard field goal, I think, in that game. And but Coach Dooley really, you know, by putting me on the map the year before, he came to me and just said, "Listen, you know, we'd still like to have you, but you know, we recommend you graduate early, come into spring ball. If we see you're healed and you're healthy, we'll honor your scholarship and give you a scholarship the next year." And that was really the only opportunity I had. Auburn kind of backed off, and Penn State was the other team that was really after me. Duke was after me to play soccer and football, but you know, I really wanted to be in the SEC, and so that's what I did. I was in a hip cast for about 6 weeks, and just doubled down on school. Graduated early when really nobody used to do that. And
yeah, I was going to bring that up. Nobody did that back in those days. Did we lose Kevin? I guess we did lose him. Let's see if we can log him back in there, Mr. Producer.
Hello?
Yeah, you there? You're back.
Oh, I'm sorry. We got some storms going on. I don't know if that helps, but you know, they logged. You know, he gave me a chance, so I enrolled that spring, got up there, and went through spring practice and really got into competition. And after that, it was just competition every day, and I took it.
Talk a little bit about Vince Dooley. Most of our listeners, I mean, they know sports, but they're mostly Gator people. And obviously, when Vince Dooley was the coach there at Georgia, the Gators didn't have much success. But how was he playing for as a head coach? Oh, yeah, we got some technical difficulties here. Should we log back in? Should we do it?
Hello?
Yeah, there he is. We're
I'm
back.
sorry, just hang with me. But Dooley
Yes.
was, a disciplinarian, Shane. He came in there, and you just had a strict set of rules. No matter who you were, you had to follow him. I think that carried over to the field. I think he demanded your attention. He demanded you just being the best you can be, and I think that's how we played. We weren't anything flashy. We ran the ball. We had really tough defense, and we used the kicking game to our advantage. And that's the one thing that really stood out to me being a place kicker for the first time was I wanted to be involved. I didn't want to be a guy that came in there, wiping up extra points every now and then. But that was a critical part of the game. I knew that with Rex Robinson. It had been 4 years prior to me, and it was something that Georgia committed to.
Talk about some of your Georgia teammates, some of the great players you played with there at Georgia.
Well, you start off with Herschel, and
He
then
was pretty
Terry
good.
Hogue, Mark Sanchez was a great defensive back. When I first got there, Kevin Jackson was a big lineman. Jimmy Payne was somebody that was coming out. Offensive Wayne Radloff. You could just go down, and when you surround yourself with great players that take pride in it, and this with your great days at Florida, that's what it takes. It takes these individuals to step up and want to be special. And when they do it around a lot of guys that want to be special, I think there's a great amount of respect, and that's where teams get better. I was looking yesterday. Some people sent me some Super Bowl pictures, and I'd never seen them when I played. And the one that stands out to me is I'm being hugged after a field goal by none other than Wilbur Marshall. And I was like, well, that right there is pretty good. A Gator and a Bulldog together and winning a world championship. That's what it's about. Wilbur was an unbelievable player at Florida, one of the best ever. And you just knew that when you came in, you respected it. And I think that's where you gain that respect.
We're speaking with Kevin Butler on the Tight Number Hotline. You can follow him on Twitter at The Real Butthead. Talking about Herschel, all these basketball players that come out of skip college and go straight to the NBA. There's never been a player who goes straight from high school to the National Football League because you're just not mature enough. Your body can't take it. But so many people said that, if Herschel was allowed to do that, he would have been able to do it. Do you agree with that?
Well, I don't know, Shane. That we've seen both sides of the coin. Even as special as Herschel was, he was so raw and naive as a freshman. I think that could have been a little detrimental, for him and his confidence and success. It's harder to have success in the NFL. I don't care who you are. And if you come out of high school, I could only imagine how hard it would be. As crazy as it sounds, I think the physicality of it, the mentality that they have to have, anybody that could do it. Because it's just an individual thing to have to do. So it's it's a matter of he would have done it. I know he would have jumped in there and tried it. I just think there's such a maturity issue that you have to go through one way or the other to be successful at the next level. We had to learn it the hard way. So when it's time, you got to do it.
Yeah, Kevin, you were the first kicker selected into the College Football Hall of Fame. I don't know if has anybody else been selected or just
in fact,
you?
this year we got the kicker from Washington. I'm just gone blank on his name. Kicked a long time for Detroit. Hansen.
Jason Hansen?
Hansen from Washington. Jason Hansen. So he made it in. So I'm excited. I sit every year at the Hall of Fame. I sit with Coach Spurrier and his wife Jerry, and we have such a good time. And he always tells me, what other kicker you got in here? I go, Coach, it's just me and you right now. I get to sit with a quarterback. So it's great that he got in. He deserved it. There's a lot of kickers out there that deserve it, but a lot of great players out there that kind of get overshadowed.
Talk a little bit about when you were back at Georgia. I believe you were one of the first kickers to stop using the tee.
No, you know what? We when you talk about a tee, Shane, it's like playing golf and hitting that driver. Certain people can hit that driver off the ground, and that's really the transition you have to go through. So I was lucky enough to have the tee my whole career. When I got drafted, that was the main thing I did. I practiced just kicking off the ground. I'd always practice it in college, but never with the reality of having to do it to try to make a team.
So we just got a text here on the Titan Mark text line. It comes from George. George wants to know, Kevin, what was it like for you as a Georgia Bulldog playing in the cocktail party there in Jacksonville against the Gators?
It was unbelievable. I mean, it was something that, when you're growing up, you knew about it. I'd never been to the game. My first time at the game was as a player, and it was everything I thought it was going to be. Just driving into the stadium. Looking at the people lining the streets, the Gators and the Bulldogs mixed together, it got you excited. And, back then we had success, but the games were just so very hard. The records were out and the teams fought hard. And, it came down, I think, except, my senior year, we got pretty much handled by Florida and Ricky Nattiel and Kerwin Bell. And prior to that, those 3 years, we pretty much got away with one of them lopsided, but the other two came down to the fourth quarter, classic Gator Bowl, Florida, Georgia matchups.
So now, I mean, you probably didn't think about it as a player, but, there's all this talk now how from a Georgia standpoint, it's not fair or whatever for you guys to have to play the game in the state of Florida. Do you like it in Jacksonville, or do you wish that they may rotate it, maybe, 1 year in Jacksonville, Atlanta, and then go, to each other's campuses? What does Kevin Butler think about that?
I'd like to see him keep it there, Shane. I love it. I think it's great for college. That's what college tradition is. I think if they could work with Florida and Georgia to give them the opportunity to recruit at that game, I think that pretty much eliminates probably the two head coaches' biggest beef.
Right.
Hey, it's a 100-yard field. It's the same kind of field you play on no matter where you're at, 50-50 fans. I'd love to see it there. And I think if they could help the schools with that recruiting, that's the most important thing. They want to showcase what a game to showcase both schools. You get a recruit in there and you're telling the kid that you really want him to play and this is how it's going to feel. That's a deal closer for a lot of kids.
Yeah. And the great thing about that event, Danny Werfel, you and I both play in his event with the Desire Street Ministry, puts on a great deal. Florida folks, Georgia folks, I've gotten to meet, I knew you from playing in the pros, but I've gotten to meet a lot of other former Georgia players, and it's just a great weekend to raise money for a good charity.
Yeah, it is. Danny is, well, as you know, Danny is a wonderful human being. He, not only a great college career, but just a great person and has given so much back. So, when you can do those kind of things, you're right, Shane, it's awesome. I never, ever in my wildest dreams thought I'd have that many Gator friends, but it's a lot of fun and we look forward to it. So, I think it's great that you can use a game like that to bring both teams together and enjoy college football. And, coming up this year, we'll have a lot to celebrate because, when something is almost taken away from you, you appreciate it a little bit more. Not like we've never appreciated this, but you certainly want to keep those things going.
Well, Kevin, you get drafted by the Chicago Bears, and man, you walk right into a great deal as a rookie. win the Super Bowl. Talk a little bit about playing for Mike Ditka and that '85 Super Bowl team.
Well, just a bunch of characters, a bunch of great athletes that were characters, a team. A 7-year process with Buddy Ryan trying to get that 46 defense just like he wanted it. I think in '84 they started to really understand it. So in '85, it was timing's everything. I made it to the last cut. Me and Bob Thomas, their incumbent kicker, had been there for 10 years. And I think they were decided they wanted to make a change there, but you got to go in and prove yourself. You got to go in there and be consistent. That's what I was able to do. I knew it was a special team. I knew it was special players. You've been on championship teams. I've been on them. There's just something about them that is their only focus, and that's all they talk about. They don't talk about the little steps. They talk about the end game. And that team talked about the end game from the day I stepped in there, and there was going to be nothing accepted short of a Super Bowl. And I felt ready for that because of my success in the situations we'd been in at Georgia. We had lost a national championship. We've been in position, 3 out of my 4 years to be in the top 3 teams. So, with Herschel there, we were on TV a lot back then. So I felt comfortable there, and it was, the perfect storm.
Did it take you a long time to figure out? I mean, obviously later in your career, it probably got easier, or not easier, but that place is so windy, Soldier Field. How was that, especially as a rookie coming in, having to deal with the wind?
Well, it was crazy. I went to Coach Ditka right off the bat, and I said, Lake Forest. I remember old Lake Forest.
Oh, what a dump!
Yeah, little dump, one field, surrounded by trees. It wasn't the place I was going to kick, and I asked Coach. I said, "Can I go down to Soldier Field?" And he said, "Absolutely." And he goes, "Just be back in time for a practice." And I made it my whole career. I did it. I'd go down, if not twice, at least once a week. And that's where I would get my bulk of the practice. And I would, work on those wins. When you're looking at the goalpost and the 2 flags are blowing the opposite way, if you're not used to it, it can mess you up. Think about putting. Anytime you have to putt a short putt outside of the hole, you're not aiming at the hole. That's not natural. You want it to go in the hole, and you have to have confidence at that point. So that's where I got the confidence from. Now, did that equate into success? No, not all the time. I think what it really equated into for me, Shane, was success mentally, to learn how to deal with misses, to know that a miss might not be because you're mechanically wrong or you didn't hit a good ball. Sometimes Mother Nature is a little bit stronger, and I think that's the challenge that guys have coming into Soldier Field. Is if it starts off bad, mentally, if you're not prepared, it can spiral out of control pretty quick.
We're speaking with Kevin Butler. You can follow him on Twitter at the Real Butthead, on the Titan MR hotline from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. Kevin, talk a little bit about, as you mentioned, the characters of that '85 team. I mean, you had Steve McMichael, Richard Dent, the Fridge, Walter Payton, Willie Gault, and obviously the punky QB, Jim McMahon, who I know is a very close friend of yours. Just talk a little bit about all the different characters on that team.
Well, there were so many, just as you said. I mean, you talk about that defense. I think right now we have 7 Hall of Famers off that team, and that's counting Coach Ditka. Jay Hilgenberg was another 8-time All-Pro center. I would expect to see him in the Hall of Fame one day. Jim Covert just got in, but from Walter to Steve McMichael, who go do rattlesnake roundups in the off season. The Fridge, he took the United States by storm. And we did a thing the other day in Chicago. It was a big telethon going to raise money for the city of Chicago during this crisis. And I was on there with Otis Wilson and Steve McMichael. And, what we really talked about was these characters. I think what Chicago loved about them was there was no wall. What we do out in public. We would go and let the fans be part of our fun too. We'd get up close and personal with them. We'd be at restaurants, we'd be at bars, and they enjoyed that. And I think the more that we were kind of just normal Joes out there, um, they enjoyed it. Now, come Thursday, Friday, Saturday, that's when Buddy Ryan would tell them, "Your ass is mine. You get inside." Um, but they loved the game. They loved the camaraderie, and their confidence was just over the top.
We got a text here on the Titan MR text line. It comes from John. He wants to know, Kevin, were you part of the Super Bowl shuffle?
I was not part of the Super
They
Bowl
didn't let the
shuffle.
rookie in it?
I was in it. Yeah. I mean, I was asked to be in it. And then we had probably about, that year we had 13 rookies on the team, which were quite a bit. You make it to the NFC Championship the year before, you wouldn't expect too much turnover, but we had 13 rookies. And in that Super Bowl, we had 3 rookies score. We almost had 4 rookies score, which was pretty crazy. So if you made the team, you were going to be involved. But it was it was pretty crazy. Those guys that did the Super Bowl shuffle. I knew they didn't draft me to sing and dance. I knew they drafted me to try to make field goals. So, each of
We lose him again?
it was pretty crazy that they were able to sell as many records as they did. And I think people that weren't football fans became fans, maybe through music, maybe through just the craziness of these guys doing something like that. But in the long run, it didn't turn out too good. There was probably about 15 million raised, and the homeless, I don't know how much they got, but it was all done for the homeless of Chicago. So in hindsight, I'm glad I wasn't involved.
We got another text here from Bob. He wants to know, how was it to play with Walter Payton?
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. I playing with Walter was just kind of, I was in awe the whole time. You're sitting there and he's a childhood hero, and all of a sudden now he's your teammate. I was lucky enough to get involved with Walter. We had a business together after he retired, and that's really where I got to know Walter a lot more. It was a great friendship. He was a tremendous mentor to me. And he helped me, deal with the ups and downs. Here's a guy that had seen the ups and downs in his career of working hard and being the best running back in NFL, and never seeing a winning season, never seeing a championship. So he helped me, on days when things weren't going good. You come up and somebody pats you on the shoulder, said, stay ready. You turn and you look and it's Walter Payton. Well, all of a sudden you get that little vibe, say, yeah, man, I need to get ready. I need to do it for this guy, and quit thinking about yourself. So Walter was unbelievable. I did go over one day and tried to run up the hill with him in his backyard, and I made sure that I'd never do that again, because he'd get you there and then you'd throw up and he'd laugh at you. And tremendous worker, tremendous person, tremendous father, husband. And his name and his namesake still does a lot for the city of Chicago.
Absolutely. Played a long time with the Bears, and then a couple of years with the Cardinals. And then a few years ago, you decided to go back to the University of Georgia to finish your degree. What made you do that?
Just a personal challenge, something that, I toyed with earlier when the online classes first started back probably in the 90s. It just didn't work out. 3 kids, they grew up fast, and it was a point in my life where I had the ability to do it, Shane. And it was just, as us athletes, we try to look for a challenge every now and then, but that was a gap. was a true gap in my career personally that, you'd spent these 4 years at Georgia, and I was very, very, very close. And the NFL took me in a different direction. So when I got back here, I was able to check it out and figure out how to do it. And I got a call after I registered, and Coach Cavan called me and said, "Hey, I heard a crazy thing. Are you really going back to school?" I said, "Yes, sir." He goes, "Well, we can have as many undergraduate assistants as we want, and you're an undergrad. Would you like to coach the kickers and punters?" And I was like, okay, I can give you a day a week. And they're like, okay. Well, that turned into the old coach's trap. All of a sudden, I'm there every damn day. I'm traveling with the team, and it was awesome. It was more than I ever thought, but I really believed I contributed. I worked with Rodrigo, worked with Cam, with the punters, the snappers. Would work with the return guys, and just trying to give them confidence. And really, what I did for the kickers was give them a foundation to practice, a foundation for them to try to measure themselves and create consistency. No college does that for kickers. For some reason, coaches just think they can send kickers to the old magic field and they can come back better. But I truly believe kickers that have a good foundation, a good practice routine, build confidence, and they become better kickers. So it was great. Went to the national championship, came out of that game 0 for 2 for national championships, and Kirby hadn't talked back to me. So shit.
Hey, so talk about, your son Drew was a punter at Georgia, played a little bit in the NFL. The pride of seeing him, punt between the hedges.
Wow. Yeah, Drew never played. He always played soccer and golf growing up. Never really thought about football. I don't know if he didn't like how I reacted to it. Coming home as a father, some weeks were tough, and but in 10th grade, he said he wanted to go out for football. And I said, "Wow, good luck." I said, "I can help you on the field goals, but I'm gonna send you to Ray Guy's camp for punting," because knowing Ray and Ray took a little bit of time with Drew, and it came pretty natural to him. Long story short, they won state championship up here. He played with Cam Hayward, who's a mainstay with Pittsburgh, and Kevin Minter, who's still in the league at linebacker. They had quite a team. He got a scholarship offer from Duke, Wake Forest, and Georgia finally. So he went to Georgia, and kind of took the lumps the first year and got in there the second year, and had a great year. Won the Ray Guy Award. Did not get drafted, but got a free agent signing with Pittsburgh. Played with them for 2 years, and then when that coaching staff went to Arizona, he went to Arizona for the next 3 years, and had 5 good years in the league, and couldn't be more proud of him. I mean, to see your son out there in a helmet when you never really dreamed about it was very surreal, and I think it's the proudest moment you could have as a father playing football, to see your son out there following in your footsteps.
No doubt. Last thing for you, Kevin. We were teammates for a year, and I just remember you, very superstitious kind of guy. You used to like stack these little pieces of bazooka bubble gum on the top of your helmet in the locker. Talk a little bit about how superstitious kickers are.
Well, I was pretty crazy. Yeah, you're exactly right. That was Banana Bubblicious.
Bubblicious. Okay, it wasn't bazooka.
Yeah,
okay.
Banana Bubblicious. I'd go through 3 packs, which are 18 pieces. I would take 6 pieces in pregame, chew them down. Start of the game, get 6 more pieces, and at halftime do 6 pieces. Every time I walked in the locker room, I had to change socks. So I'd have Gary Hager used to hate me, but he finally just got my own socks made up for me. If I had a bad warm up, I would come in and I would just strip down, and I would just take the whole uniform and give it to them and go, "I'm not wearing that," because it's obviously not me, it's that uniform. So it really was always about routine. I'd get early, I'd clean my shoes, saddle soap them, lace them up, the leather soccer shoes. You just try to get into that mode, and superstition's part of it. Once I got out on the field, I think I'd even take the superstition to, when Tom Zach was my holder for a long time, I'd always tap him on the helmet as I walked back, and tapping him on the helmet was that trigger for both of us. The center and the snapper are so important. If you can get them to buy into it and be committed to their position like you are, it relieves a lot. But the superstition was something that probably started on a Friday. So it carried through Saturday. Kathy would leave the house on Saturdays, and I'd watch some sorry football up there in Chicago, man. I'd have to watch like Illinois State versus Northwestern. Yep. How the hell you get fired up for that? You can't. So ESPN finally started getting in. We get a little bit more SEC games up there, but I'd become pretty focused on Saturday, and you just get into the routine.
Good stuff, my man. Well, we appreciate you joining the program. Y'all stay safe there. Tell your family I said hello, and we'll hopefully see you in Jacksonville here pretty soon.
Yeah, well, if you make it up here to Atlanta, you got a game.
Yes, sir. All right, that's Kevin Butler joining us on the Titan MR Hotline. We're going to take our last time out of the program. We'll be right back.
Time out! Time out! Hey,
thanks, buddy.
Thank you, bud.
Time out! Time out! There we go. Good.
We want to take this moment to thank all our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills.
Let's give them something to cheer for now.
Our Gridiron sponsors are Crime Prevention Security, small enough to serve you, large enough to care. Titan MRI, Gainesville's only locally owned and operated MRI facility. Peachland Dentistry, Gator Nation's #1 choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte and surrounding areas. Area Rug Masters, your #1 choice for rug cleaning. And Pound Hurt, preferred personal injury attorneys.
Our touchdown sponsors are Campus USA Credit Union, Celebration Point Town Center, Tropical Smoothie Cafe, The Keys Grill and Piano Bar, The Digital Mortgage Guy, Adams Ribs, Cloud9 Spa, Gator Dominoes, Celebrate Primary Care, Center State Bank, Gator Bait Media, and Davis Chevrolet.
If you are interested in promoting your business on the show, you can visit our website, potupwithshane.com, and click on the Advertise button or call Freddie Wiebe at 352-284-3733.
Again, thank you for all the great businesses that support the show. Please remember, if you like what we are doing here, thank our sponsors and support the businesses that support us.
He's looking, still looking. He's going for the end zone. He's got a touchdown.
Welcome back to Pot Up with Matthews in the Morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. Large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Wednesday edition at Center State Bank. We put business first. We are the largest community bank in the state of Florida. Center State has 5 convenient Alachua County locations to serve you better. Come in and experience the Center State difference. To learn more, visit Center State Bank, member FDIC. Just don't forget, This Day in Sports is brought to you by the Best Restoration. Do you have COVID-19 concerns? Do what everyone is doing and hire the Best Restoration to fully sanitize and sterilize your home or office. Visit their offices this week for a free bottle of hand sanitizer when you mention the code SHANE. Call 352-234-8994. This Day in Sports in 1984, Boston Red Sox. Roger Clemens beats the Minnesota Twins 5-4 for his first ever Major League victory. Don't forget, on tomorrow's program, Dara Torres, she's got to be the greatest female swimmer in the history of the United States. She will be joining the program along with Blake Alderman talking Gator recruiting. And then Friday, we're going to have Jamie Spironis, Coach Spurrier's Director of Football Ops. And then Jackie Spreads will be here, who's brought to you by Peachland Dentistry, Gator Nation's #1 choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte and surrounding areas. I want to thank Mark Schlabach from ESPN.com and Kevin Butler, former Georgia Bulldog, College Football Hall of Fame kicker and Super Bowl champ with the Chicago Bears, for joining the program. That's going to be a wrap for today. We'll see you tomorrow, folks. Take care.